Now
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
Zooming along here on a busy Wednesday morning in your nation's capital at 7:06. Thanks for tuning into O'Connor and Company. If you missed any of our program up until now, why don't you subscribe to our podcast so you can catch it later. Coming up at 7:35, Congressman Mike Waltz of Florida about that hearing yesterday over Afghanistan. And then at 8:15, Lauren Boland, spokesperson for the National Cherry Blossom Festival, because the blossoms are in bloom. And we're right in today's the first day of the festival, right?
Yeah.
Julie Gunlock, Larry O'Connor, you are almost at the point where you got to start thinking about colleges, right?
Yes.
Your oldest is a junior right now?
Sophomore. Mm-hmm.
Sophomore. So next year's the kind of go time.
Yeah.
And for those parents who have seniors, right now is sort of you're getting the acceptance letters back or the rejection letters back.
Yeah.
And you have to make some decisions. And a lot of parents, like me, I went through this last year with my number 3 child. You're finding out that college admissions are a lot different than not just when you were this age, but a lot different than like 5 years ago. The changes have been so rapid. So I wanted to address that. We've got Laurie Kopp Weingarten. She's a certified educational planner at One Stop College Counseling. Ma'am, thanks for joining us today.
So nice to be here.
Well, I'll give you my experience. When my son was applying to colleges, he had great SATs, he had great transcripts, he had all the AP classes and all that stuff, and he was kind of stunned to realize that despite what his counselors were telling him coming into high school, a lot of colleges are now sort of not really taking that stuff into effect, or certainly not weighing it as much as they used to. Is that the case?
Yes. So testing has become marginalized in college admissions, especially since COVID, but even pre-COVID, there were a lot of colleges that were starting to say, oh, what is testing really measuring? Because it's directly correlated. Test scores are directly correlated with parental education, parental income, and also with race. So then colleges were saying, well, what are we really measuring here? So test scores started to become much less important in the process. Then COVID hit. People couldn't test. Nobody wanted to proctor teenagers in a room during COVID. So they had to go test optional. So almost every college went test optional. There were a few holdouts. But now things are changing. And some of the colleges are now saying, wait a minute, we thought tests weren't important, but maybe they actually are important. So some of them are coming back. So I'm glad that Julie doesn't have a junior, because some of the juniors are freaking out right now, because it is all of a sudden they're being told, wait, some colleges are now requiring it. It's late to tell a junior to start taking the SAT or ACT. So yeah, it's like a whirlwind of change.
So during those COVID years where the SAT and other standardized tests weren't required, what was the criteria? Was it just grades? Was it activities? You mentioned race. What did they throw all of the sort of measurements out and just guess? I don't understand how these colleges determined what would make a good student.
Yeah, it's a great question. So, well, they were really trying to focus heavily on the transcript instead of using as the academic profile the transcript and testing. So now here they are saying, okay, let's really take a deep dive into the high school transcript and look at the grades and the rigor of the students. What's unfortunately happened is this has become the generation of everybody gets an A. So now they're looking at transcripts and everybody has A. I think the numbers, like 68% of kids are graduating high school with an A average. Years ago, it was like 20%, decades ago. So the grades are going up. So now they're saying, well, what do we do? Everyone has an A, and now there are no test scores. So yes, of course, once they do an academic review, they're moving on to essays and interviews if they offered it, and activities and everything else, and the teacher recs and the counselor recs. But the problem is that academic review, I speak to admission officers all the time. Some of them have said to me, kind of on the side, like, it would be nice to have a test score, or test scores aren't all bad, or sometimes we just need that test score. Yeah.
Wow. Laurie Kopp Weingarten's our guest. She's a certified educational planner. One Stop College Counseling is the website. It's one-stopcc.com. And I see from your CV here that you've got Wharton School of Business, University of Pennsylvania, thank you very much, on your resume, which is very cool. But, Penn and Harvard and Columbia, they were in the news for all the wrong reasons at the end of last year in December. That hearing that ended up seeing the departure of the president of Penn and Harvard. Columbia is still sort of hanging by a thread there, if I remember. Or no, it was MIT. Excuse me. It wasn't.
MIT,
it wasn't Columbia. Have you seen, because of that and because of some of the other activities and things that we've seen at the more prestigious Ivy League schools, have you seen sort of a shift from parents and students in prioritizing schools like that?
So I have seen it, not as much as what's being reported sometimes in the news. A lot of students, to be honest, this is kind of a sad statement, but a lot of students and families have said to me, you know what, they were in the news for the way they handled anti-Semitic remarks and anti-Semitism. A lot of the students are saying it's kind of everywhere right now, so it's not going to make too much of a difference of where I go.
That is sad.
Yeah, I'm hearing that a lot. Because it's not just those schools. We're at UC Berkeley, there's an investigation going on. There have been, I could go on and on. It's basically almost every selective school. I work primarily with students trying for these highly selective colleges, and it's pervasive, unfortunately.
I have a quick question about, we hear a lot about the mental health crisis among young people in this country. What are you finding when you talk to students? How are they doing sort of mentally and socially after years of closed schools and social isolation? Are you finding that kids are recovering, they're getting better, or are we sort of going down this sort of despair spiral even more?
So it's complicated. I think that before COVID hit, I was already seeing quite a few mental health issues with especially these high achieving students who are trying so hard. They have they're focused on these lofty goals of getting into an Ivy League or a school similar caliber. And then COVID hit, and that social isolation was a disaster for everybody. It wasn't just the teens, but I work with teens, so that's who I'm seeing. It got pretty bad. And this year, the seniors this year were the ones who, many of them, had ninth grade remote. So they had they never really finished eighth grade. Then ninth grade was remote. I had a situation where we do a lot of mock interviews, so we prep them for college interviews. For the first time ever, we had to tell quite a few students, please don't interview. We're not going to be able to get your interviewing skills up quickly enough. But I'm seeing, so now we're doing things with our younger kids to make sure that they have the social skills, and I'm seeing an improvement. So like our sophomores coming in, they're doing better.
Good.
Well, on behalf of all radio hosts everywhere, I wish you could transfer that education on interview skills to some of our guests that we have. You accepted, though. You're a fabulous guest, and we appreciate you joining us.
Larry, I'm so sorry. I just have one last question. And this is a personal question for you. There's another person in the education field with the name Weingarten. Do you sometimes get mistaken for her? And are you getting any hate mail?
I have never been mistaken for her. I do get asked if I'm related, and I will answer I have no relation to her.
Oh, good.
I don't
be sorry about that.
Well, I will say, when I saw this in the show run, I thought, oh my God, is Randy coming on the show?
Which we would welcome. We'd
Yes,
love to
exactly.
speak with the fine teacher, the president of the Teachers Union. All right, Laurie Kopp Weingarten, thank you so much. Great stuff. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's
So
One
nice.
Stop College Counseling.